Hey guys, so today we're going to be talking a little bit more about phrases and clauses, specifically focusing on our clauses. So let's just review really quickly. Phrases and clauses are different because. So I want to know what the difference is between phrases and clauses. Everyone take a second and I want you to fill in that blank telling me what you think the difference is between phrases and clauses. So everyone should be filling in that blank right there. All right, so hopefully you started to say something about how a phrase does not have a subject and a verb and clauses do have subjects and verbs. Okay, so if you didn't already have that, make sure you have it written that phrases have a subject and a verb, or sorry, phrases do not have a subject and a verb, clauses do have a subject and a verb. Okay, so let's take a look at this section and just to review, we're going to identify each underlined section as a phrase or a clause. So let's look at number 1. After the game, the team sent a telegram to their opponent. So our underlined section is after the game. Looking at this, I don't see any verbs, definitely. So I know it can't be a clause because I don't have a subject and a verb. So I'm going to put phrase. All right, let's look at number 2. A helicopter lowered a ladder from the sky to the survivors. So my underlined section is a helicopter lowered a ladder. So I'm looking for whether or not I have a subject and a verb there. So looking at it, I have a helicopter, my subject, and I have what it's doing. It lowered. So that's going to have to be a clause. All right, now really quickly, I want everyone to do the same thing for 3 through 5. Just identify whether each one of those is a phrase or a clause, and then we'll come back and check. All right, so hopefully you got a chance to answer those questions. Let's look at number 3. We have handed Rico the money for our tickets. Looking at the money for our tickets, once again, I don't have any verb in there, so it's going to have to be a phrase. All right, number 4, in the middle of the road. Same thing, no verbs, we just got 2 prepositional phrases there. It's the same thing, I'm going to say phrase. All right, before the outburst, the singer from the group had performed. So here I have a subject, singer. I got a verb, had performed, so that one's going to be a clause. All right, now, all clauses have a subject and a verb, like we've talked about, but there are actually 2 different types of clauses. Okay, so independent clauses can stand alone as a complete sentence. So that means if I took them out by themselves, it could be a complete sentence. Okay, so when the bell rang, the class bolted for the door. All right, the class bolted for the door is an example of an independent clause because if I took out that beginning part, all right, the class bolted for the door could be a complete sentence. It can stand alone. It's a complete thought. All right, let's look at our next one. I smiled at the new student. So here we have the whole thing as an independent clause because all complete sentences have to have an independent clause in them. Okay, I smiled at the new student. We got my subject, we got my verb, okay, and it can stand alone. All right, I fell down the stairs because I was jumping down the steps. So here, my independent clause is going to be I fell down the stairs. We have our subject, I, we have our verb fell, and it can stand by itself. All right, now, let's talk about our other type of clauses, and those are dependent clauses. So dependent clauses have a subject and a verb, but cannot stand alone. That's why they're dependent. They depend on the rest of the sentence, okay? So, because she was so pretty, she won the beauty contest. So, for my first part, because she was so pretty, that's going to be a dependent clause. If I just say to you, because she was so pretty, that has a subject and a verb, but it's not a complete thought. It leaves you hanging, okay? So that's what a dependent clause is. It's got a subject, it's got a verb, but it can't stand alone as a sentence because it's not a complete thought, okay? Let's look at our second one. When I rode the roller coaster, I was terrified. Same thing. When I rode the roller coaster is going to be my independent or my dependent clause because it's got a subject, I, it's got a verb, rode, but it can't stand by itself. If I just say to you, when I rode the roller coaster, you're going to be like, okay, what happened? What happened when you rode the roller coaster? What's going on? Okay, so it's not a complete thought. The little girl cried until her mom gave her ice cream. So here, my dependent clause is going to be until her mom gave her ice cream. Because same thing, it can't stand alone. If I just say until her mom gave her ice cream, like what happened until then? All right, but I still have a subject, her mom, and a verb gave, so it's still a clause. Notice, whenever you have a dependent clause, you also have an independent clause with it. So she won the beauty contest, I was terrified, the little girl cried. All of those are independent clauses, which you always have to have with the dependent clause, okay? Because they depend on that independent clause in order to be there. Otherwise, they can't make up a sentence by themselves because they're not a complete thought. All right, so let's talk about why dependent clauses are dependent. So they're dependent because they begin with what's called subordinating conjunctions, okay? Now, we had actually talked about subordinating conjunctions before, but we've called them cliffhanger words because we didn't know the official term yet. And these are words where when you begin a clause with them, it leaves you on a cliffhanger and makes it not a complete thought, okay? Now, one of the easy ways to remember these words is awubis, okay? And that's because a lot of the words begin with A, W, U, B, I, or S. Okay, so we have after, although, as, when or whenever, while, unless, until, because, before, if, and since. Now, this is not a complete list of subordinating conjunctions. There are more than this, but these are some of the most common ones that you'll see. Okay, but anytime you see a cliffhanger words like this that leave you hanging and stop the clause from standing alone, right, you know that it's a dependent clause. Right, so anytime we start our clause with a cliffhanger word, that makes it dependent. So let's take a look at the back of our page. Go ahead and flip your paper over. All right, and we have an underlined section, and we're going to identify it as an independent or a dependent clause, and we'll do the first couple together. So let's look at number 1. If you like good Southern cooking, you will love Mississippi. So I just have this underlined section, if you like good Southern cooking. So I've got my subject and my verb, you and like, just like I always will with any clause. Dependent or independent. So now I just want to ask myself, does it stand alone? Okay, so if you like good Southern cooking. I see that I start with this word if, okay, which is one of my cliffhanger words, and it doesn't complete the thought. I don't know what happens if I like good Southern cooking, okay? So that one's going to have to be a dependent clause. So I'm just going to put D, C right here. All right, now let's look at number 2. I need to go to the store. We're out of milk. So looking at my underlined section, we're out of milk, I have my subject and my verb, we are. So I know it's a clause. And now I want to see if it can stand alone. So if I just say we're out of milk, right, that can stand alone. So that's going to be independent. It doesn't have an awubis word or cliffhanger words. All right, so it's an independent clause. So I'm going to put IC here. All right. Let's look at number 3. I was going to see the land of the lost until I heard it wasn't good. So my underlined section is until I heard it wasn't good. As always, I got a subject I, verb heard, so it's a clause. Just want to know whether it can stand alone or not. So if I just say until I heard it wasn't good. All right, I'm starting with one of those cliffhanger words, until. So that makes it not able to stand alone. That makes it not a complete thought. Okay, so I'm going to have to put DC here, dependent clause. Okay, so now what I want y'all to do, you're going to do 4 through 10. You just have to tell me whether it's an independent or a dependent clause, okay? And then we'll check these tomorrow, do some more practice. Any other questions you have, we can address then. All right?